The episode opens in the midst of the Sargasso Sea in the South Atlantic Ocean on October 11, 1492. A ship battles a fierce storm, with every crew member working tirelessly to get the water out. Amid the chaos, the captain spots a massive vessel drifting past them, but before he can react, it vanishes without a trace. As the captain tries to make sense of the situation, he notices that his crew members are also disappearing in a mysterious and unsettling manner. The scene then shifts to current times, where a ship is hunting whales to sell their meat on the market. Nearby, a group from a smaller raft tries to warn them that their actions are illegal, but their warnings go neglected. The larger ship proceeds to shoot a whale. Moments after the whale is struck, the ship suddenly erupts in flames and splits in two, sinking rapidly. The resulting waves from the explosion also capsize the smaller raft. Mino Paloma, the sailor on the smaller raft, desperately tries to communicate with his team, but his efforts prove futile. Despite his attempts to rescue others, he is unable to save anyone. In the end, Mino becomes the sole survivor of the disaster. Meanwhile, shipping tycoon Eric Benerl has lost several ships in the Bermuda Triangle, the same place where Mino and his team experienced their tragic incident. With Mino being the sole survivor, Eric visits one of his ships with his assistant, Aaron Ackerman, where they examine a badly deteriorated corpse that's hard to identify. Aaron notices a cross around the corpse's neck and inquires about it. Eric explains that based on its appearance, the cross dates back to the 15th century. He then proposes bringing in a team of 4 experts to investigate further, making it clear that he expects them to agree without any questions. Howard Gregory Thomas, a journalist, visits Mino in the hospital. At first, the nurse refuses to let him in, but Howard sneaks into Mino's room. Posing as a doctor, he questions Mino about the incident. Mino explains that the massive ship was struck by a violent force, and as he describes the location, Howard recognizes it as the Bermuda Triangle. After a brief conversation, as Howard is leaving the hospital, Aaron approaches him with a letter. Howard initially worries it might be a legal notice related to his failure to pay alimony for his daughter, who lives with his ex-wife. However, Aaron reassures him that it's not related to that, and hands over the letter before leaving. Next, we see Bruce Geller, a thrill-seeking and often reckless meteorology professor known for his questionable morals, engaged in his latest risky adventure, skydiving in severe weather. The following day, just as the police are about to arrest him, Aaron approaches Bruce. He offers to help with the bail, providing Bruce with a number from the letter he just handed over. Stan Latham, a man with real psychic abilities, is trying to locate a missing child in the midst of a crowd. Aaron approaches him, hands over a letter without any explanation, and then walks away. Meanwhile, Emily Patterson is having trouble with her boss at work. As she exits her flight, Aaron gives her a letter with little conversation. Later that night, the 4 of them meet at a port, where Eric soon arrives to join them. He introduces himself and explains his business, including the trouble he has had with losing ships in the Bermuda Triangle. Howard, Emily, and Bruce each share their thoughts on the ship disappearances in the particular area. Eric then reveals that he has lost 6 ships in the triangle over the past year, all without any distress signals or warnings from the crew, who were all highly professional. He takes them on a tour of one of his ships, noting that it is the only one that has ever made its way back. Of the 25 crew members on board, only 7 survived. Eric adds that these survivors reported seeing a wooden sailing ship with a Spanish flag, which hasn't been flown for over 4 centuries, appearing through the fog. Emily suggests it could be a recreation of an old ship, but Eric dismisses her theory. Eric then takes the group to the ship's engine room, where they find the engine stained with blood. He also shows them a photo of some remains found on the ship's foredeck. Next, he introduces them to the 7 survivors of the incident, who are still on board and too frightened to leave the ship. Emily then asks what Eric wants from them. Eric explains that he needs them to investigate the cause of the incidents in the Bermuda Triangle. He chose them because of their diverse expertise, from scientific knowledge to moral insight, as well as their experience with the Bermuda Triangle. Eric promises to pay each of them $5 million if they succeed in uncovering the mystery. The next day, Mino is discharged from the hospital. On the drive home, he confides in his wife, Helen Paloma, that the Bermuda incident might have affected his memory, as he can't recall the color of his car. Once they are home, Mino joyfully reconnects with his older son and their pet, but he struggles to recognize his younger son. Meanwhile, the 4 team members gather to discuss their new project on the Bermuda Triangle. Emily asks Howard if there is a defined boundary for the Bermuda Triangle. Howard clarifies that the boundaries are Miami, Bermuda, and San Juan. As they get to know each other, Bruce suggests that they should fake a report and submit it to Eric. While Stan goes to get a cup of coffee, he notices a young girl named Heather in the crowd. Later, Aaron joins them, providing plane tickets and a stack of CDs with information about the Bermuda Triangle. and details about their new office location. A while later, Heather and her parents board their flight. After a while, Heather makes her way to the washroom while the weather outside appears to be clear. Meanwhile, the pilots suddenly spot a massive bank of fog ahead. Out of this fog, numerous fighter planes emerge, speeding directly toward them. The pilots, startled by the unexpected threat, quickly make a sharp turn to avoid a collision, causing the entire aircraft to lose its balance and sway uncontrollably. Back at Mino's home, he struggles to remember his younger son and the moments they shared in the past. He attempts to play a game they used to enjoy together, but finds himself unable to do so. Observing his difficulty, Helen suggests that Mino should see a psychologist for help. Upon hearing about the plane crash, Eric immediately calls Aaron and instructs him to get the group off the flight. As Aaron makes his way to them, Stan begins to sense that something is wrong. Aaron soon arrives and escorts the four of them to a helicopter, which will take them to their destination. While in the helicopter, Aaron hands out Department of Defense indefinite security IDs to each member, ensuring that they won't face any interruptions or questions as they carry out their work. After they land, they head straight to a room with a monitor displaying an underwater view. The plane, which crashed just an hour ago, appears old and rusted, as if it has been submerged for decades. To everyone's shock, there are no passengers or bodies inside the plane. Bruce, however, confirms that the plane is of a modern model. The group also notices other aircraft and ships scattered across the sea, all of which look quite aged. Among these, they spot a man inside one of the wrecks. Emily assesses his condition and estimates that he has only been in the water for an hour, or two at most. While investigating, Stan has a vision of the crash and insists that Heather might still be alive in one of the wrecks. Since there are no expert divers among them, Emily and Bruce decide to take the risk and dive in to explore what the cameras might have missed. They prepare for the dive and make their way into the water, hoping to uncover more details about the wreckage. Underwater, they spot a group of sharks, but surprisingly, the sharks are not moving as expected. Emily decides to collect a sample of the ocean water for further analysis. They then head towards the craft in search of Heather, but despite a thorough search, they cannot find anyone. It appears that the passengers have mysteriously vanished, even though their seat belts were still fastened. As Emily and Bruce start to head back, Stan directs them to a locked cabin. When they open the door, they find an elderly woman emerging from inside. Emily and Bruce quickly rescue her. Back on the ship's deck, the elderly woman introduces herself as Heather, claiming to be a 6-year-old girl. Before the team can ask her more questions about what happened, the real government officers arrive, persuading them to leave quickly. As they are departing, Emily has a vision of the plane crashing into the water, with the passengers calling for help. Just then Bruce pulls her inside to escape, so they manage to leave right in time. At their temporary residence, Aaron inquires about the results of the water sample Emily collected. Bruce explains that the analysis revealed the presence of halocline, a layer of fresh water in the middle of the ocean. Meanwhile, Stan expresses his concern to Emily, claiming that the elderly woman they rescued is actually just a 6-year-old girl. Emily is skeptical and questions Stan's statement. Stan responds by pointing out that since he led them to the girl, they should trust his vision. Bruce eagerly rushes down the stairs to share the news with the team that they will soon have a submarine to aid their research. While Mino is working at the port, he suddenly has a vision of ghostly shipmen haunting him. Terrified, he quickly flees the area as fast as he can. Meanwhile, Eric also experiences a frightening vision of someone, leaving him deeply unsettled. The next day, the team prepares for their journey with Captain Jay on board. During the trip, Stan, Emily, and Howard discuss the Bermuda Triangle. Emily proposes her theory about wormholes allowing people to travel through different times, but Howard dismisses it as an outdated idea. Just then, Bruce calls them over to see the haloclines. Emily explains that the vision they are seeing might be related to desalination, which can occur through electrical processing. As they dive deeper, they discover a U.S. Navy collier from World War I. Suddenly, a loud noise fills the submarine, causing it to stop and sending Howard into a panic. While Captain Jay and his crew work to fix the submarine, Emily confides in Stan about her vision of the plane crash. Howard adds that everyone is experiencing strange occurrences. Bruce then rushes over, mentioning that he did not see his reflection in the mirror. As they discuss these unsettling events, the submarine starts up again, and Captain Jay brings it to the surface. He instructs everyone to get some fresh air, and climbs on top of the submarine. Suddenly, a bright light appears, leaving everyone perplexed. It is revealed in the next episode that the bright lights were caused by the crafts flying above them. As the light fades, these crafts, along with some rafts, surround the submarine. People from the rafts board the submarine and inject the team with drugs. When the team regains consciousness, they find themselves in a dark room. Confused and unaware of what has happened, They are then separated and interrogated individually. The interrogators have detailed information on each individual, indicating their involvement in legal government institutions. The female officer reports to her supervisor, explaining that the team was hired by Eric to investigate the Bermuda Triangle. She recommends quarantining them until their mission is completed, noting that there are still 50 hours remaining. However, the supervisor argues that it would be better to let them go, believing that their mission will likely be finished by the time they learn more about the team. The four of them are brought back to the same room, where Bruce informs them that they are underwater. As he describes his experience, people enter the room again and inject them with drugs. When they become conscious, they find themselves at Miami Beach. Howard calls his ex-wife, Sally, to come and pick them up, and she agrees. Next, Mino is at home heading for a shower when he suddenly feels like he is drowning. He cries out for help and pushes against the shower door. As he collapses to the floor, everything around him returns to normal. The team of four returns to their homes. Stan tries to find out information about Heather, but comes up empty, which frustrates him. Meanwhile, Emily is working to get her job back, and Howard is struggling to meet a news deadline while his daughter calls him to pick her up. At Bruce's workspace, he discovers a newspaper with an article about his own death. Just as he is trying to make sense of it, a young girl interrupts him. When Bruce checks the newspaper again, the death article has vanished. Later, Emily hears strange noises coming from the kitchen and goes to investigate. She finds an elderly woman doing the dishes. When Emily asks who she is, the woman responds that she is her mother. Overwhelmed by the revelation, Emily collapses to the floor. But when she regains her consciousness, she finds the lady has disappeared, and there is no one else in the house. Meanwhile, Howard arrives to pick up his daughter and finds Bill, a U.S. Navy man and the father of her daughter's friend, inside the house with a gun. Bill is frantically telling the kids to leave. As Howard tries to intervene, Bill, consumed by a hallucination of a blinding light, shoots himself. Howard reports the incidents he witnessed to the police, who conclude that Bill's death was caused by a drug overdose. At that moment, Howard spots the same female officer who had previously captured him: Emily, Stan, and Bruce. Afterwards, Emily gets a call from Bruce to discuss their bizarre experiences. She agrees to meet up right away. When they get together, they compare their hallucinations but can't pinpoint the cause. Emily suggests that they might be glimpsing alternate realities. Bruce then proposes a theory about electromagnetic disruption, suggesting that something could be interfering with their senses and perceptions. Later, Stan visits Howard and tells him about Heather, stressing that she could be significant to their research. Howard then agrees to investigate further. They head to the office and access data from the airlines. The records show that Heather was listed as a senior citizen, but when they check the seating arrangement, Stan's claim is confirmed that Heather was seated between her parents, James and Allison Sheedy. Following this, they decide to meet with Emily and Bruce and go to see Eric. There, they explain their experiences with alternate realities, and Howard suggests expanding the team to determine if the hallucinations are related to the Bermuda Triangle. Eric, however, informs them that he cannot expand the team because the Navy has threatened him to shut down their investigation. He then tells them to leave and find the answers to their questions on their own. As they are leaving, Emily notices a group of soldiers surrounding the area. To their shock, these soldiers are from the Nazi era. Just as one of the soldiers is about to shoot, the scene suddenly changes, and the soldiers vanish. The team is left puzzled about why they are all experiencing the same hallucinations. However, they now at least have a clue that the Navy might be connected to the Bermuda Triangle. Meanwhile, Mino is adjusting to life with his younger son. After returning from the market with toys for both of his children, he shows them to his wife, Helen. To his surprise, Helen informs him that they only have one child. Mino rushes to the children's room and realizes that Helen is right. Helen then tells him to seek help for his condition, warning that if he doesn't, she might leave because she doesn't want their only son to suffer. Conversely, Stan and Howard visit Bill's place because Howard suspects Bill might be connected to the Bermuda Triangle. As they search for information, the police arrive, and they quickly leave the scene after collecting some receipts from Bill's drawer. The following day, Mino seeks help from a psychiatrist to address his troubling experiences. After reviewing Mino's case, the psychiatrist suspects he might be suffering from selective amnesia, a rare condition where a person forgets specific events or information. However, due to the rarity of this condition, the psychiatrist acknowledges that further research is needed to confirm the diagnosis. During their session, Mino opens up about his deep-seated guilt and regret. He feels responsible for the deaths of his friend and the other passengers from the incident, struggling to come to terms with his inability to save them. This overwhelming sense of responsibility has been weighing heavily on him. Later, back at work, Mino is still grappling with his feelings of guilt. During this time, he experiences a vision of his deceased friend. In the vision, his friend offers comfort and reassures him not to blame himself for the Bermuda Triangle incident. As Mino processes this unexpected moment of solace, another friend interrupts him, calling out and breaking his vision. Next, Bruce shows Emily some geo-electromagnetic data from an old CanStar satellite over the Atlantic, which tracks major weather events in the region. He also presents nautical weather broadcasts from San Juan, including area radar, sky bird photos, and ship radio traffic. Since these indicators don't align, Bruce is unable to draw any clear conclusions. They both struggle to understand why the Navy would construct a station in the middle of the ocean. Emily then quickly proposes that the station might be built there to generate massive electromagnetic power. However, they still can't find a clear answer to their questions. Their research indicates that the weather might be controlled by some man-made forces, but they are uncertain if such technology exists. Bruce suggests that they should fly to the Atlantic to seek further answers. Although Emily is initially reluctant, she eventually agrees to accompany him on the trip. As their journey progresses, the weather worsens, leading to severe turbulence on their plane. They struggle to control the aircraft amid the escalating conditions. Stan and Howard find some receipts from Bill's house and use them to locate specific areas, where they pay a visit. There, they discover a Navy base and decide to explore it. Inside, they encounter a female officer whom Howard recognizes from a previous meeting. Meanwhile, Stan explores the facility and comes across Heather. When he touches her hand, he experiences a vision of Heather's past and learns that her grandfather is still alive. Stan is then apprehended by the Navy and brought to the same room where Howard is. After listening to Stan's account, the female officer issues a warning and allows them to leave. At Stan's residence, Stan uses his abilities to investigate Heather's grandfather. He asks Howard to wait outside his room and come in only after 25 minutes, instructing him to wake him up in any way possible. Howard agrees, and when he enters the room after the allotted time, he finds Stan unconscious and covered in strange markings. They discover that Heather's grandfather is named Carl Sheedy and successfully manage to locate him. When they visit Carl at his home, he informs them about the plane crash and explains that Heather was the only survivor, who has now aged into an old woman. During their conversation, Carl mentions that he and his friend, Assam and Victor, were part of the physics department. Victor's brother-in-law, who worked with the Navy laying deep ocean cables, called Victor to assist them in a mysterious issue. The problem was that in certain parts of the ocean, the cables would get damaged, and even after recoiling, they would end up getting shorter. Victor and Carl were called in to investigate, and upon investigating, they discovered exotic matter. They spent months researching this phenomenon, but just as they were about to publish their findings, the Navy intervened and prevented them from doing so. Victor ended up working for the Navy, but Carl did not. Carl believes this ties into Heather's current situation, and feels it was something he had anticipated. Howard urges Carl to join them in their investigation, and Carl agrees. He leaves his wife behind and accompanies Howard and Stan. On the other hand, Mino is visibly stressed and confused about his perceptions. He distinctly remembers his friend dying in the Triangle incident, but the newspaper doesn't list his name among the victims. On the side, he spots a short article by Howard about the Triangle. Overcome with anxiety, Mino drives to the sea, intending to end his life. Just as he is about to act, a sudden change in the weather distracts him from his action. As Carl, Stan, and Howard drive over a bridge, the surroundings around them shift suddenly. The bridge begins to fade, causing their vehicle to plunge into the water. Howard manages to rescue Stan but is unable to save Carl despite his persistent attempts. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on the notification, and leave 1,000 likes or 100 comments if you'd like us to continue part 2. Thank you.